How do you read the situation?
So really, I'm hoping that we can take a step back, and the view of our organization as a research organization is to say that these issues are systemic. They're not about individuals, they're not about single institutions, because if you look at the history of South Africa, not a single city or a single province in this country has been able to drive the transformation that is enshrined in our constitution and in all of our policy documents. So we've been forcing ourselves to ask the question, what is really at play here?
What is at play?
I think one of the things that we're missing in this conversation, it's not everything, but it's certainly one of the things, is the financial legislation that underpins the way that decisions are being made in government is not being scrutinized, and all we're doing is having an infighting where we're pushing people into corners. But the real thing at play here, and what our research is uncovering, is that in fact, as cities face greater financial pressures, and we all know what's happening in the electricity and water space, so which were previously cities' cash cows, their increasing revenue stream is from property rates. And property rates is based on value. It's a percentage of the value that you get allocated as a city. The incentive then is never to accommodate poor people who aren't able to pay rates in the most valuable properties in the city. So there's a systemic power that's pushing cities to act in a different way.
So as a former city manager, is that why there's a focus on your Zimbali, your Shaka, Point, and so on? That's where the money is going to come from?
No, I mean, you've got to combine a variety of things. We had a 10-year financial model that we developed in the city that looks at economic issues, those are that, social issues, that's around housing, environmental issues. And you've got to get the right mix of that. Now, at times you push too far in the social direction and you'll end up exactly with that kind of problem there. So the first thing is that the major cities in South Africa, and I think we must understand they do measure themselves against other international cities too, and I think they're doing a really good job there. We've got a long way to go, there's no doubt in our minds, but they are doing a lot to try and get that balance between economic, social and environmental issues right. The environmental is hugely important for us, and that's why I used the example earlier on of a Gautrain. Point is that you've got to get people off the road. You can't have South Africans, when they start earning 7,000 to 8,000 rand a month, the first thing that they think about is buying a car. We've got to create a society where you don't do that. You don't do that in other areas, and so we're saying let's move in that direction.
But even the Gautrain is a bit problematic for me. Let's look at the subsidies on public transport.
Yeah.
For every Gautrain passenger, the subsidy for that passenger is about 60 rand. But if you are traveling on municipal buses, it's between 16 rand and 25 rand per passenger. PADCO and BRT between 11 rand and 16 rand, I think. And then for PADCO passenger, just over 3 rand. And for the taxi industry, nothing. So we've built houses, or not built houses. We've got informal settlements out in the periphery where people are 40 kilometers away from work. They spend 40 to 50% of their budget on transport. But the transport mode that they use, that carries 67% of the workforce, is not subsidized. That doesn't look right.
That's not right. And I do think that is a matter that's being addressed quite well. I sent 30 of our biggest warlords, if I could call it that, in the taxi industry off to Colombia to go and begin to understand how they could move beyond as a taxi industry. And they were, in the sense that it took us 18 months to put the guns down outside the negotiations in order that we can make sure that we're beginning to build. We then made sure that they took over the inner city bus service, which is what they're running now, to move beyond being a taxi industry. But I completely agree that we've got to begin to make sure that we're subsidizing fairly and properly. But the point is that ultimately you've got to have a range of those services. You've got to stop particularly middle-class vehicles off the road. We've got too much of that occurring, right through to making sure that we've got to get our cities knitted correctly. So I'm saying it's a complex set of issues, and I completely agree the taxi industry should be subsidized. We've got to develop a model that's beyond just recapitalizing.
Well, the Minister of Transport was also invited, the Minister of Housing, just so they could speak to each other. But as we said, they sent you, Mike, to come and answer their question on their behalf.
Thank you, Ridi. So,
tell us where you're from again.
Yes, my name is Vuyiswa Muchegwani. I represent the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners. And our members are private sector property developers and practitioners. But of course, we are trying to drive transformation in a heavily untransformed property sector, and a sector where black people, as we know, continue to not own property and not participate in the property market. And one of the key challenges, and I think it's coming through in a lot of the comments today, is around development planning. there is no commitment to implementing any of the policies that exist, those that do exist, but even many that do exist are not fit for purpose. As a country, we have been built around segregationist thinking. We need to stop talking about affordable housing. Why is it that poor people live in housing, but rich people live in suburbs? It can't be. We need to start talking about inclusive development, and every aspect of development, every aspect of how we develop and think through our cities needs to be inclusive. We are one country. We don't build for the poor and build for the rich. We build for one society. So what I'm saying is that when we build, how we cannot continue to build these large, mammoth, gated communities, these mega, waterfall developments.
How much land can one person need?
I mean, there's an 8 billion rand worth of investment that has gone into that development. Not one unit, not one shop, not one school has been built for the local community. We act surprised that we have poor people in this country. So this is why we have land invasions, because we don't plan for the poor. We need to plan for the poor at stage 1 of our development planning process.
I mean, middle to high income earners, people who live in suburbs. I'm one of them. We live in suburbs. The conversations are wrong in our country. The idea of inclusionary housing, people see it as taking away from, as compromising property rights. How do we achieve this mind shift? Who leads that process?
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that, again, that it's a political leadership failure. Communities are open to integrated developments and to also respond to the South African Cities Network. This project that was blocked by the DA caucus in Salt River would have been a mixed-use, mixed-income, tenure-blind development. So it would have generated rates for the city, it would have accommodated social housing, it would have accommodated student housing, and it would have accommodated commercial uses. So you would have had a integrated development, exactly as the lady was just saying, on one site, close to the city, on public-owned land. And unless we change our attitude to public land and regard it as a public good that is there to serve the public, and one of our greatest needs is the housing deficit. And so we have to regard public land as something that can assist us to address the housing deficit and the integration.
But Brett, my heart breaks. I'm standing here thinking, are we then all activists here? It's kind of sad for me when people who are running the city, and you were with Mayor Peter Abdullah, can't even get their own ideas through, can't inspire their colleagues to do the right thing, because now we're speaking with you being on the other side. What are the obstacles?
I think we have to start looking at, and we have elections coming up, and then I'm going to go a little bit into electioneering. We have to stop looking at, as South Africans, at blindly just, I always vote this and I always vote that. You have to really look for leadership that is willing to stand up and do something. And I'm telling you that there are good leaders in South Africa who will take action and will make the change. And you just need to vote for them.
Are you inspired?
To be honest, I'm not. And I say this as somebody who does trust Brett Herron's willingness to achieve these kinds of projects that he's articulated. However, if you have been in government for as long as you and Patricia de Lille have been, how will we be swayed that this will now happen now that you're outside of the party, the ruling party in Cape Town? And I think it's a failure in the way that the system works, that if somebody is willing to use its land, the city's land, to transform the city, that instead of pushing and really trying to transform the system, they step out. I think that's a problem. I think it's a problem that we're sitting here with national and city government in conversation and deflecting, because that means to me that you've not come together around solutions and urgently prioritizing them. Something that's creative, something that's going to really change the way that our apartheid spatial city actually looks like. And for me, what it means is a need to prioritize the redistribution of state land now.
Your comments?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Temba Mafuya. I'm representing Transformer SA.
Can you stand up, please, so we can see you?
Okay.
Yes, you are from Alex, yeah?
We are from Alex.
You were singing on the big debate the last time. You were singing, Tumamina. So are you too mad? What's been happening since we last spoke?
Nothing has been happening. We saw the Alexander shutdown has been emerged there, and then the mayor didn't want to come and say he blames the ANC. But over and above that, we see that our government doesn't have the master plan. Because if the government have the master plan, we really have the problem that we're having in Alexandra, because now Alexandra doesn't have space. What we must do in Alexandra, we must do their high-right public housing that is belong to the government. And then we also, because we are nascent, those who are in the middle class, we can build the affordable houses for them. So they call it low-cost housing, the JOSCO ones. And then when you look at the JOSCO, there's many criminal elements that has been happening in JOSCO, and then no one has actually been hand accountable of that thing.
Okay.
The government is not ready to be hand accountable. I don't know what Mr. Mayor can say.
Mr. Mayor, I know that you are on public record talking about some of the corruption that you have found, talking about the malfeasance that you found. We're not seeing any serious and high-profile prosecutions. So it's kind of hard to have sympathy for you when you say that there are certain obstacles in your way and you can't provide these things because of the people that are still in the department. What's your excuse, apart from having been there just 2 years? We know that, but what's your excuse?
Well, it's unfortunate the radius you are aware, I run a municipality with certain constitutional competencies. I don't have prosecutorial competency. I don't have prisons. I can assure you, I'm really asking the national government, give us as a test as the city of Johannesburg. Give us prosecutorial responsibility. Give us prisons. I can tell you our prisons will be half available.
The city wants to run prisons. The city wants to run prisons. Okay, where's the microphone? Where's the microphone? Who's got the microphone? Sir, you speak in the meantime. Speak.
Well, my name is Sufri Kletus. I'm a foreigner. I'm studying with the University of Johannesburg, masters, and we become scapegoats. As a member of the African Diaspora Forum too, we want to distance ourselves from any foreigner who is involved in criminal activity. And we are challenging the DA and of course the South African government to bring them to book. Because as a student who is paying a lot to study here, we love this country. But I am a victim in the buses, in the roads. I can be killed at any time. But I am paying taxes and I'm coming from far. And we want to build. So we are calling on the South African government to invite us into their building, because we can identify, if they have the list, those foreigners who are taking the country back. But we shouldn't become scapegoats, because Africa was there for South Africa during the back days.
But, you know, I really do appreciate what you're saying, but it pains me that you feel you have to take responsibility for every African migrant or national who's here in South Africa. I think that I'd be ashamed to live in a country where we're pointing at African nationals and saying, you take responsibility for what your people are doing. These binaries of you people and our people, I just think that is going to take our country backward, and I'd like to live in a more welcoming and just society than that.
Mopasi. I come from Alexandra Township. The way the situation is desperate in Alexandra, people are building on top of graves, number one. And secondly, they are also closing the river, Joskei River. They are building on top of the banks of the river. And where does this soil come from? That is closing Joskei River. It comes from Sandton City. And who's paying for that sand to be deposited inside the river? It's big business. Big business doesn't want to take part in Alex problems. They're distancing themselves. But the issue that I wanted to challenge with, besides Herman Mashaba, the mayor, being a scapegoat here, Trevor Fowler is responsible for all this mess. Trevor, you are.
Okay, wait. Tell me why
the reason why I'm saying Trevor Fowler is responsible for this mess, precisely because of he worked with the presidency during Thabo Mbiki's era. And secondly, he was the MEC for province and local government. And he worked also as a city manager. He knows everything that we are having today is a problem in the city of Johannesburg. He knows everything that the people of Alexandra are suffering. And he's speaking very less. He must answer today.
Trevor, that's fair, right? Hold on, let's give him a chance to speak. That's fair, right? You were in the presidency, you were in the province, you were in the city. And let me pick on you once more. You were also with Murray and Roberts. That's a private sector. I know they are busy with infrastructure, engineering. They built that bridge that collapsed on Grayston Drive and killed 2 people, right? I know you didn't do that, but the point of the matter is that you've kind of been present in all these spheres that are responsible for the desperation that we're seeing today. How do you plead?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the first things that let me
Let him
talk
answer.
about. Around, first of all, around in Alex, we, when I was there, negotiated with the Alex Alpoa, the Alex land property owners, who had an interdict to develop Alex, which they had there for some time. So we negotiated with them to lift that interdict so that we can in fact invest in multi-story buildings. Now that happened close to the end of my term, and we didn't. It wasn't implemented because I wasn't there. But that was one of the key things that we looked at. The point that's being made about being in the presidency, being MEC for local government. Of course, I'm aware of the problems in Alex, and one of the key areas is that what we've had to address is this question of how do you ensure that the people of Alex are served in a way that addresses the
So
challenges.
you failed in that
No, let
regard.
me finish. Let me finish. One of the key things is that when I was there, we looked at the number of people who go from Alex to Sandton. It's about 10,000 people a day, and many of them walk. And we put in a new pedestrian bridge to enable that, but also
Okay, wait. Let him finish
Right.
quickly, Trevor, before we go to...
also there was a new bridge for buses to go over that was built. Those were 2 things that were done. The other was really to try to negotiate to ensure that we are able to build these high rises.
Can we integrate cities with a couple of bridges?
No, I'm not. I think that's an unfair question.
But the people responded to
Yeah.
you asking...
No, we were talking about
saying that you've built the bridges, right?
Yes, but I was saying it's for a particular purpose. The main way to address this is really to ensure that we have high-rise development in Alex to enable people the density that is there.
So I guess the question was more of why didn't it happen? Hold on. Why didn't it happen? Because we have the plan, we have the policy. Why didn't that happen? You're saying it's because you left before it could take off.
Yes.
That's the answer. He left office before that time. Quickly.
I think
You want the microphone?
Mr. Fowler must be fair to himself and say to the people of South Africa, I have failed and I am sorry. Because the statement that he just posed now to say he negotiated, no, he tried to negotiate and he was not successful. Hence, we even see the interdict still standing even today. But now the bone of
Will
contention
you
is
accept,
here.
though, that it's not just about Trevor, it's about the ANC, it's about the system, it's about
Precisely.
who was running the city
We're
at
going
that time?
there. The bone of contention here is there to say we as South Africans needs now to stop behaving as subjects of the country. We need to act as citizens of the country. Because one thing, in conclusion, what we need to do is there to say we have put faith in those that took over after apartheid, but they have slowly moved. Now let's remove them and put people that are going to work for us.
Thank you very much.
Carry on, sir.
Thank you very much. It's very sad to see.
Speak up, please.
It's very sad to see 25 years after democracy, even our mothers begging for RDPs. I think our people deserve spacious houses with nice gardens and even nice things such as swimming pools. Now, to get to the point of Mr. Mashaba spoke about how they sell these properties to private companies, and then make sure that they monitor the rates, and then these companies are being inclusive and so forth. But the question is, why sell it like that in the first place? I mean, why can't you say, okay, we'll give you this land, but then you make sure that you split the profits, which can then be channeled into improving the lives of our people. So it is said that these political parties are funded by these private companies, so maybe that's why we're seeing the problems that we are seeing. I mean, there has been yes, there has been proposed ideas such as the land value capture or the land value tax. So why aren't we hearing more about that?
Okay, I want the mayor to respond to that in just a moment, but I do want to go to a Cape Town example. If I remember correctly, the Foreshore Freeway project, some of the protest was around land that was sold to Growth Point at, if I remember correctly, 82 million rand, when it was worth far more than that. And what he's saying is not so far-fetched. If we were to open up the books of the political parties, the law has just been signed. Maybe we'll find out that a lot of these financiers and property developers are funding these political parties. Cape Town, tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I agree that we need to open political parties funding, and I do suspect that a lot of the pressure that I got personally was around party political funding, because land is very valuable in the city centre of Cape Town, and for it to be used for a public purpose removes the opportunity to sell it. There was a piece of land that was sold right in the city centre, where the development rights, the reason why it was sold under value was because the development rights were advertised as being less than what they really were. So it was advertised as having 19,000 square meters of developable rights, when in fact it had 46,000 square meters of developable rights. So the property developer who purchased it got a massive discount.
Let's be clear with what you're
saying. Is that I'm convinced that there are property developers who are financing the Democratic Alliance, and that is why I got pushback on the properties that I had identified for public housing.
Okay, beautiful people, welcome back again to this particular episode. In this particular one here, we are talking about how South Africa finds itself in a position that it is in the present moment of speaking. Of course, there are many things. The one thing leads to the other, and the other leads to another one. But who is to blame in this particular context here? South Africa, from the we've previously said in the previous uploads that you see the demographics of South Africa dictate that there's gotta be, everybody has to be listened here, because everybody claims the piece of that cake. And in this particular case, I would say that what needs to be done, and whose responsibility is this, that they're going to see the issue of land, settled once and for all. Because that is one thing, that is a bone of contention that the South Africans are maybe grappling with, even if they're not able to exclusively say this on the public, or maybe if those ones who do, they're those ones who are daring. And should there be like kind of a forum or an institution that is set aside to oversee or oversight land in South Africa, a very genuine institution. But again, from the previously we did say that, you see, the government has that particular mandate. The government has an upper hand, to be able to oversight through the land and the land issues that are pertained in it. And this one would see maybe the South Africans living in harmony and harmoniously. But again, in this one here, we see, infrastructurally, South Africa is also infrastructurally like, there are two worlds that we've got, for the haves and the have-nots who live in the shanty, apartment, and also the other ones who live in, better places. And this has to be neutralized in South Africa, so that at least we do not have one segment of, a group of people trying to say, hey, you know what? You cannot live nicely like that, and you're still home. Like literally those who've got that particular deep-seated, kind of a grudge that this land was snatched from their forefathers. So there's going to be something that needs to be done in South Africa, and that really is bestowed on the government, the coalition government that you're talking about currently in the time of speaking. Guys, if you're feeling me, I really feel for this, because you see, for Africa to be united, there's going to be some issues that need to be ironed even at a grassroots. So we cannot forgo, we cannot assume and say that, you know, everything is just nice. No. It's not okay until it's okay. So do drop me your comments on the comment section. Let me know exactly what you think, what needs to be the way forward for the South Africans. And and do you think much is done as far as these particular issues that are still the bone of contentions are eating the South Africans, either quietly or conspicuously with the evidence? You know, you can tell from the body language and from the very many, you know, sentiments that we've heard from great leaders and leaders who are the opinion, you know, makers of the South Africans. So guys, I'm gonna patch it, I'm gonna pause it at this particular point until we meet in the next upload. Stay tuned, and if you haven't subscribed, kindly guys give me that particular thumbs up, and of course leaving me a tiny little comment won't do me bad. I'll really appreciate. Stay tuned.